we are going to start just for like the panelists are going to briefly introduce themselves so we get to know them a little bit before the panel discussion. So maybe Katia, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the founder currently of Chateau Colving in France, and we are a bit different than most of the panelists here because we are the only representative of a destination co-living, which is a boutique one, privately owned, private investment. We don't have any backing, but still it doesn't mean that co-living is not a good investment. There are different forms and shapes of co-living. And for me personally, as a background, I'm coming, like most people, from a corporate background, and then starting Chateau Colving was something that was making a lot of sense for me personally, since it was the lifestyle that I have lived for the past 10 years. Traveling full-time, working remotely, going from one co-living to another, one destination to another. So yeah, that's how I started. I don't know, that's it. I think we started the co-living in May 2021, so it was still kind of semi-pandemic time. It was not very sure where it will go, and we are quite happy with the result today. I think we were lucky. We are not on the market for a very long time though. So yeah, that's about me.
Thank you, Katia. Looking forward to hear all your answers in regards to the topic today. This is going to be very interesting, as you said, because every participant here comes from a different shape of co-living, but in the end, what we all want is connected communities, right? And the essence, and that's, we cannot lose that. So maybe Anna, would you like to follow?
Sure. Well, I'm Anna. I'm coming from Urban Campus. We are a multi-format residential operator. And under these formats, we include co-living, of course. It's actually how we began and how we've been really placed into the residential rental market. And yeah, we've been doing this since 2018. We were the first co-living in Madrid, one of the first in Spain. And we have this approach to, well, and we're going to be entering in France in the coming months, in February, actually in Lille, and in Paris very soon. So yeah, we just following also your comments, Katia, on the different types of co-living. We are more focused and focused in general on co-living as a residential format. And for these, we were focusing on long-term stays and you know, a very much of a format that you can apply also to different formats in the residential market. We're also entering into the BTR multifamily formats in the coming months. And yeah, we're trying to apply everything that we've known so far in the last years of what works in co-living and what works in this updated residential offer into new formats in the residential market.
Thank you so much, Anna, for the brief intro. And last but not least, Ulrich, please.
Me again. Okay. My name is ULRICH KOLLER. I'm the ex-CEO of Quarters, which was actually the biggest co-living provider until the end of 2020. Unfortunately, we had to send the US part of the company into Chapter 7, and the European part, which means Germany and the Netherlands, got sold out of insolvency to a competitor, which is called Habit, which is still on the market from my latest knowledge.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So less is more, right? Thank you, Ulrich.
Yep.
So, okay, let's go to the topic of today, which is some, investors, because it's a new model and a new way of living. They hesitate, and sometimes there is this question about is it profitable, and how does it work in big cities, and is it also what happens when co-living arrive to rural areas. So all of these questions, I think our panelists are able to answer, as well as what happens when things go wrong, and learning from mistakes, right? So I think we can start with Anna and the thoughts of Urban Campus, and with her experience about co-living. What are the benefits for investors and for operators of co-living, of investing in co-living?
Okay, well, that's a big question. So following up on what I was saying in terms of our understanding of co-living, because there's many different ways of doing co-living, basically one per operator, I'd say. I think each one of us in this room might be understanding co-living as a different thing. But following up on our understanding of co-living as a residential format, this is extremely important for us and our investors when, deciding and thinking about moving into the, developing a portfolio of co-living, or, transforming an asset, or even building an asset and treating it as co-living. For us, co-living is a residential asset that has the sustainability and stability of a residential asset. However, given the characteristics of it, with the densification of the spaces, with the community value that we bring into it, the services, the whole resident experience that we provide to our tenants, we basically get to a higher yield. The secret to it and the secret sauce is really based on the different assets, but it's really based on those specific KPIs and ratios of densification, your whole approach to community, your whole approach to all the different services and experiences that you can build in that building. Of course, when you're considering renovating or building up a co-living building, you also start to put attention to different things that you wouldn't have done in traditional residentials in the past, maybe a little bit more now with new trends, etc., which is optimization of spaces, ESG, sustainability, control of your operations in general. And you also count on operators, like in our case, Urban Campus, that will help you throughout the whole process of renovation and construction, so that you get to the more optimized assets. All of that combined with the rental premiums that these sort of experiences enable residents to pay, or make them willing to pay, get us to this higher yield. However, all of these things are not only interesting for yield, etc., but also investors tend, or one of the things that we've seen is that there's a tendency on a willingness to incorporate these sort of assets, more alternative and sustainable and top-notch and pioneer assets into portfolios, that then all of a sudden revalue the whole activity of the investor, starting to certificate assets, in sustainability, ESG, BREEAM, and similar certifications. All of a sudden, put investors in a very specific, innovative, and conscious point of view, or place in the market that is also very interesting for them. So overall, working in co-living, we've seen that it's something that really triggers this renovation of the whole residential market and offer and products out there. And it's something that really investors, in addition to the economic benefits of it, are interested in doing.
Thank you so much, Anna. I know it's a broad question, and you've done it great. Like, I really admire the way you guys do things, because this is the proof, right, that co-living works as well in big cities. Because sometimes this is why also I'm curious, right? Investors ask, like, how do you match numbers? How do you get to reach the numbers in cities like Madrid, where the plots and the assets are quite expensive, and then you need to offer also like a fair rate to residents as well, and also create a connecting community. So it's not easy, but as I heard, and you will confirm, like, your assets are full, right?
Yes, we're 100% full, with a waiting list of 100% of the capacity of the assets, and hundreds of leads coming in every week.
Can I ask you how many rooms you have under fire actually overall?
I should have that question by heart, actually, because we just opened 2. We are about 200, 220 beds right now, without counting the ones that we're going to open in France in the coming months and in Valencia also in Q2 2023.
Okay.
Yeah, not bad, not bad.
Can I ask something as well? I'm sorry, because Anna mentioned in the introduction that something that she framed in a very nice way, multi-format co-living. Could you please elaborate a little bit about that? Because you mentioned families, you mentioned multiple.
Yeah, absolutely. We, as a urban campus, we are developing projects in both the co-living side of things, but also on multifamily. Multifamily understood as the new BTR, a productized residential rental offer that brings in more than just the real estate to the experience of the tenants. This can be through more or less common areas, more or less services, more or less community building. But at the end of the day, bringing all these different alternative items into property management into the traditional residential market. So we actually started with co-living with the aim of really, renovating the whole real estate offer. Quite ambitious, of course. Renovating the whole thing, it's a bit of a dream. But at the end of the day, we really saw that there's a bunch of little things from co-living and such a very niche product that you can bring to the broader scene into the BTR market. And that's how we identified multifamily as the biggest way, or the strongest point of entry for renovating this offer and making sure that existing buildings, but also new buildings, follow what the new society needs in terms of services, community spaces, etc.
Sorry, is it answered already, Katia?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anna. And from this success and expansion and growth to an experience of massive co-living and the impact of COVID, can you tell us about the co-living and the success for investors and the resilience and during COVID, Ulrich? Can you talk about, if you unmute, please?
I was telling this actually before, the resilience over COVID actually depended very much on the market, because like I told before, Quarters had at this time actually 3,000 rooms operative, which already really working, and about 2,500 under construction, which were actually signed and under development. And the experience we made, you really need to divide in different markets. So the one market which was actually on the one hand, which would have been the best one, but during the COVID crisis was the worst one, was the US market, because in the US, all these clients, the digital nomads, the young people, whatever, actually they left the big cities like New York and whatever. So there actually Quarters had an occupancy rate of 30%, maximum 40%, and this is definitely not enough to run a building profitable. So actually the US market was burning money like hell, to be honest. This was the main money burner. On the other hand, the European market was actually quite stable, even during COVID pandemic. There we had an average occupancy rate of 75%, which was more or less okay, taking under consideration that we are in the middle of the biggest pandemic, which actually made the building at the end of the month, the P&L ending up at a zero result. So actually no problem. But then, of course, you have overhead costs. Okay, what can you do? Even if you do cost cutting, you need a certain amount of people working for you. So the whole business needs to be functioning. So in situations like this, you really need to separate the markets. The point which we knew actually at this, during this COVID pandemic is, if the pandemic is gone, the market will come back, and actually it might come back better than ever, because people and young people will rush into the cities again. So the information I have from our competitors, that even in the US, occupancy rates are actually tremendously up to about, in the high 90s, which means like everything above 95. And under these circumstances, you can actually highly profitable run a building. So this was actually the main answer. It's like every industry in the hospitality industry, especially like hotels, Airbnb, street competitors of co-workers, everybody was suffering. I mean, places were empty. Everybody depended on governmental support, otherwise they would not have survived. Airbnb was suffering like hell. Yeah?
So why an investor should choose co-living over any other type?
The argument, if you talk, you mean an investing investor into co-living, or you're talking about a real estate investor into a building?
Investor into co-living.
Investor into co-living, because in the end, if you take into consideration the world right now we are living in, and the completely disrupted market, it's a tendency how young people or how the young society is developing. It's always been the same arguments. It's housing is getting very, very expensive. We have the inflation right now. People are super flexible. They want to move from one country to the other. If they come, they want to have a plug-in solution for, let's call it 6 to 8 months. At Quarters, we had an average time staying of 9 months just to get to know the city. If the job works out, they want to live with peer groups. Let's call it, according to the salaries, the tendencies, especially in the US, people already need to spend about 40–50% on their income on housing. This is way too much. The next argument is everybody is asking for an on-demand lifestyle. You want to live close to a city. There is a given job mobility. Again, you have the rising rents. Inflation is coming in, especially in the situation right now. Everybody's asking for an affordable, efficient solution. So if you pull all these arguments, there are huge statistics behind. 50% in the US or in the EU are so-called millennials and Generation Z. People start getting married much more later than, let's call it 50 or 20 years ago. Nearly 80% of people want to live in urban areas, which urban areas means there's not enough place for everybody who's rushing into the city. Again, there's this saying, this rent burden. Again, people need to spend more than 30% on living. This is actually too much, especially for young people. And whatever the arguments, it's like in the US, you also have this situation that young people are very much in debt because of their education fees, which gives them much less possibility to rent or even buy their own apartment. The tendencies in this on the working market, or that the labor contracts are getting shorter and shorter. You only get this atypical contract, which means a lot of people work on freelance contracts. They need to change the cities. They do not have a lot of money for housing. And last argument was also, let's call it the loneliness. Yeah, if you come to a new city, we had this timeline how to develop yourself from short staying to owning an apartment. So it's the normal development. If you go somewhere on a trip, okay, you take a hotel. If you stay longer somewhere, okay, you check out for yourself an Airbnb. And then you have this huge time gap before you actually stabilize your life and decide to rent your own apartment, whether by yourself or with a family or with friends, whatever. And then comes the last step, but this is far ahead, buying something. So there's a huge gap between this so-called short-term staying and checking out your own apartment in a new city. So in this time gap, this co-living completely rushes in. So from an investor side, the argument was always like this: let's call it this industry, if you want to call it co-living industry. This co-living industry is right now very much fragmented, so very much divided by a lot of, let's call it, small companies having a couple of 100 rooms under fire, which is not a lot actually. The business case in co-living is, of course, you need to reach the expansion and the economies of scales to feed a big headquarter, a little bit depending on the real estate market everywhere. So, but the second you have, let's call it 4,000, 5,000 rooms operative, you can run this business EBITDA positive. And from there on, actually, you really could start global expansion. And from this point on, you become actually very interested for every company in the hospitality business, because you feed young people, which means future clients. And of course, in the end, if you grow big and you have a lot of people living at the co-living spaces, you can raise actually additional income from selling off this business as SaaS, which means software as a service, which means you do not need to take care of your building by yourself or build up your own co-living space. There are thousands of, let's call it 2-star, 3-star hotels all over the world, which are not running very well right now because they're not located in the city. They cannot charge the highest rates. So somebody who owns a building like this, he might be interested to bring you into this building as a co-living provider, because you fill him up the business and you fill him up the building. The big chunk in this co-living in the end, I mean, having the OpCo, which means the operation company, is nice. It can generate money. It might be super interesting. But the big money, the big chunk is actually in the real estate investment. So the guy who owns the building, he is going to be the one who makes the big money. Because real estate investment is like, let's call it quite easy like this, 30 times a yearly rent. So imagine by yourself what comes up to this real estate investment if you are able to raise your rents by, let's call it 5%, 7% per year, because you bring in a co-living provider. And what is the sense of the co-living? The sense of the co-living is actually, if you just take one apartment, you just plug in more people in this apartment and you charge them more than the market rent. This is how you earn your money, nothing else. And this gap between the market rent and what you earn, you share a little bit with the landlord. So it makes for everybody a lot of sense. That's it, actually.
Oh, thank you, Rich. Very
Little bit too much information, I know.
Yeah, so. Very insightful. And I think we are touching lots of things. We are touching how we can just grow using technology, the importance of ESG that Anna mentioned before as well. And for me as well, and Co-Liv, the organization, and that we also foster, and it's very important, the connecting communities, right, to fight the isolation that you mentioned as well. Not just youngers, but couples like co-living for elders, and so there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of different kinds of co-living. And talking about that, maybe Katia can also learn from the business model, and she can also explain a little bit more about the differences between destination co-living, residential co-living, and co-housing, and how she's succeeding with Chateau. Thank you, Katia.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, our business model is completely different from what Ulrich and Anna were talking about. This is why I would like to bring a bit of a different perspective, because actually the business model is different, and also the people that we target are completely different. So we are targeting the people that are escaping the cities, exactly the opposite, and the people that are not looking into rooting into one place, but who are working remotely and traveling as they go. I think it's very important what Anna started with, explaining that co-living, it's not that we understand a lot of things under co-living, it's just that there is no, in my opinion, standard explanation to anyone what co-living actually is, because co-living is a word that now is used for so many different things. And this panel is also an example for that. So from my understanding, destination co-livings like ours are targeting people who are rather working remotely for shorter stays. So we are talking between 2 weeks and 6 months stays, people who are changing locations constantly, and people who are not necessarily looking into settling down, while from my understanding, residential co-living are rather more often than not in big cities, and solving the problem of affordable housing, where they target mainly younger people, not necessarily, not always, but very often people who, a lot of them can actually have a fixed job in the city, and that might be the primary reason why they live in this city. And they wouldn't have ownership in most cases. As Ulrich said, it's kind of closing the gap between renting your own place, starting a family, settling down. So that would be the residential, and then the co-housing, what Anna mentioned with the families. I wanted to ask actually if they also have ownership into the buildings, because from my understanding, co-housing, the category of co-housing goes when people start to have some kind of shared ownership, while in residential co-livings, they stay long-term, but they wouldn't necessarily have ownership on it. That would be the difference. I don't know if everyone would agree, but I like to frame it this way, like that it's more clear to people. And then when it comes to our business model and destination co-livings, as I mentioned, we are welcoming. We are much smaller scale. First of all, we are very much based on community, and because of that, it's an extremely human-focused business. So I would like to very much look at it from the human perspective as well. Even when we talk about business, when we talk about investments, at the end of the day, co-living in all its different forms is all about community. And I see this with our clients more often than not, that for them, one of the most important things is the shared values. And of course, business, we take it very seriously, but we also think that co-living, and especially destination co-living where people come short-term, should be extremely human focused. And very often it makes a huge difference when the operator is there just to catch the wave because it's trendy, because it's something that is making money at the moment. Of course, we are all making money out of it. But I think that clients see very much when it's something that is done also with human touch, with heart and soul, when it's something that you would have chosen as well for yourself. And that's why how much you believe in it. So when it comes to investment in small co-living spaces, in boutique spaces, in much smaller scale, which can, for example, a property like ours can also easily eat up millions of investment. If it will bring it back, it's another question, but it can easily absorb it. I think we see in our business model two types of investors. So one are the investors that are personal investment, people who are ready to settle down, who have been working remotely, traveling for a few years, either getting a bit tired already of traveling and changing locations, or just wanting to continue to do that, but feeling financially stable and often want to invest their money into real estate, and they wouldn't want to put their money into traditional real estate. So a lot of them are asking themselves the question whether they should buy a bigger property and start their own co-livings. So that's one side of the investment type of people. And then on the other side, we see similar people who want to invest into destination co-livings as something that is already operating and functional and profitable. Like we have, for example, a lot of people, we have a big property with several buildings with a big park. So we have a lot of clients who actually want to invest into our business as an already functioning business, be it with renovating one of the buildings, which is currently not on the market, be it with building additional units, tiny houses, creating some kind of village around the main co-living space. So yeah, this is the second type of investment. And most of all, in our cases, destination co-livings, the investment proposals and the investment interest comes from people who are actually living this lifestyle and who are part of the community. Of course, we've been also approached many times, and especially before the pandemic, also from venture capitals and angel investors, and that's also a good option. But I would say for smaller operators, they should be very careful when they accept investment. I know for a lot of people, it's the dream to have someone that wants to invest in your business, and that's true. But when it's something that you do with a lot of heart and soul and a lot of emotions, not every investor is the right investor for you. So this is something that I would advise smaller operators to consider as well before accepting, because actually investment, like being involved in such a venture, is a little bit like marriage. So we have to think about it before we go for it.
Yes, I always say your business partner, you need to, or you want marry this person. Like, this is a person I'm going to marry because you're going to spend so much time with this person. Great advice, Katia. Great advice, really. And great explanation of your business model and how it works, and the human part that I share with you. I'm passionate about all that you said already. I think it's great. Thank you so much. I mean, there is so much useful. This is gold, guys. I think every one of you, like everything that you said already, it's like an answer to why co-living is here to stay. And yes, so just from my side to ask to thank you and to ask the attendees if you have any question to the panelists, or even the panelists to each other, this couple of minutes, and then if there is time we will do another breakout room. Have you got any question, Penny, written? Have you received any?
Not in the chat, but yeah, I do invite people to put their hands up and ask any questions they have directly to the panel.
Yeah, I have a question, because it's otherwise so quiet, which is also not good. No, because now at this moment there are not a lot. The market is not that big, but yeah, if you look at all the reports, then in a few years there's going to be a lot of competition. Does it worry you as an operator? Is it something that you think of right now, or is it just well, it's going great right now, and let's see what happens? For somebody who owns
So who is the question? I can answer.
Maybe to you. Yes.
Mm,
You're not really in the urban areas,
yeah.
but
yeah, someone else can answer then.
Yeah, maybe I can answer. I mean, even knowing that Quarters failed, the market right now is very fragmented. So there are a lot of very small players. Most of them are definitely searching for finance rounds. Nobody from a lot of them will not survive with any finance rounds. So the ones who will make it and are able to buy out different other ones, from my point of view, they will eat up the market. And again, the main trigger in this whole game is again to have your headquarter costs under control and to go out into fundamental expansions. Let's call it, at least, depending where you start off, but the main markets are actually still Europe, the US, and Asia. So if you're able to be up front right now, or at least in the top three, from my point of view, there will not be a lot left than more, well, let's call it five competitors on the market. And it really depends what kind of finance backup you have. Or even if you have even an investor or finance backup from somebody in the hospitality industry. Because these people also can help you making your rooms full. So having full rooms for nice rent, again, is the key to everything. And the key to everything is this: in the end, it's a real estate business. It always sounds nice, co-living and hospitality. In the end, it's a real estate game. So the point is just like proper buildings in proper areas. So you really can attract these young millennials, the job hoppers, this generation set.
okay.
I'd like to jump in as well. I sort of agree with some of the points that you brought up. In our case at Urban Campus, we've been focusing on the last years on the type of things that in the future we hope and expect to be key in our differentiator from other operators. In addition to, a really good product and a really good experience, and potentially even the synergies between the different formats in the residential market, and how the different stages in life that you're focusing on and the targets that you're focusing on could accompanying you throughout your life, and you could be throughout different moments in life. But the two real focuses that we have been having is, one, scalability, and making sure that we could grow in different cities and in different formats and in different volumes without the need of undergoing into enormous growth in terms of team and operational costs. Of course, technology is key in this, but also the operational processes, creating differentiations between centralized processes that you use, or like as a headquarter, that you use across the whole operation in the world, in our case, Europe for now, but also in terms of, and the balance of that and the local processes that you need to have. The balance in this has been key. We didn't begin with such an optimized way of doing things, but every little step that we take on the way on that, we believe is going to be key for the future comparison with any other operator. And then the second point that we've been focusing on is very related to investment and having institutional partners that will accompany us for more than just one asset, who we can develop portfolios with and that will trust in the way that we operate, and that, as long as we are successful, of course, but that we can count on for big portfolios and long-lasting relationships.
Okay, thanks. Questions?
Great question, Oscar, and great answers. I think also Katia had a say on that, because it's urban, but it's also rural, and we are seeing now a growth in rural areas of co-living. And one part that I think, and I want to ask Katia, do you think is important, like, as in any business, the way you treat your clients and the way you connect with communities? that you will survive. Like this will depend also on your survival, whether it's rural or urban. But what do you think, Katia?
Yeah, I wanted to answer actually Oscar's question. Despite that we are not a residential co-living but destination co-living, I think it's something that applies to any business. There will always be someone with better property than you. There will always be new people on the market, someone with nicer location, better stuff, whatever. It's how it is in business always. And that's why for me, when it comes to co-living, what is important is to sell values and not real estate. Of course, real estate is the investment. Of course, real estate is the core of the whole business and operation. But when it comes to the clients, what you sell is values, because there will be always someone with a better real estate with you, from you one day. And this is for me, my formula how to overcome potential competition. It's true that the market is growing very quickly. I believe that the demand is growing extremely quickly and proportional to the supply. Maybe for the moment there is even a bit of shortage of supply. So yeah, that's my take. And when it comes to rural co-livings and a bit less developed outside of the urban areas, what is extremely important is the connection and the positive impact on the local communities, and showing also to the local communities and having their support on what you're doing. In rural areas, it's sometimes very difficult to explain what you are doing, because it's a concept that is rather new. But showing the difference between regular tourists and people who are there for co-living, and all the benefits that they bring, and how much they care also about the local areas and the local communities makes a big difference. And I think this should be, for rural co-livings, this should be really part of their objectives, to connect and to make a positive local impact.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Very good.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your participation, for the flexibility of the panelists and the presence, because we had to move the panel, and also for Anna, that she has been able to make it and represent the Urban Campus in the end. So I just want you to wish you happy holidays, and I would like to see you again in January in all of our panels, and thank you again for everything, panelists, Penny, attendees, and we are here for you guys. If you need anything, you know where to reach us, and for more info, just reach the panelists on LinkedIn.